came in the air without.
Who we got? Anders in Norway. Yeah,
Yay.
we had Anders
Hello.
last week. How are you doing, Anders?
I'm doing great. I'm really liking the show, and I think you guys should pitch this to a major network to get the word out there.
We get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
It turns out you have to provide a lot of money to make that happen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If only it happened for free, we'd be there.
Well, we have the internet now, so we can do things for free. But,
Yeah.
So my first question is, will the rules of the universe, quote unquote, kill God in the future? Everything in the universe has followed some rules, and they kind of are the product of these rules.
Yeah.
And the rules said first adapt, then they said find clothes, then they said go to the moon. Then each step will kill God in the future. Do you think?
No.
No. The political God.
You're talking about the God of the gaps, right?
Well, it very much depends on how you define God, but in the broad sense, there's always going to be somebody who defines God in a way that God is immune from these things.
Right. A lot of folks say that God makes up the rules, right?
Yes. That
puts
as
God outside of the rules, right?
As the transcendent author of these rules, he's not subject to these rules. And so no matter what we learn and discover about the universe that would limit, there will always be some people who accept the idea of this God. Now, what I do think is that as we learn more about the nature of reality, the nature of the universe that we live in, the belief in God will it's going to
get more
variate, but it'll eventually decrease to where I think P.Z. Myers said that it would be something along the lines of knitting, some kind of a hobby, or it would be more embarrassing to say that this is something you believe. I'd like to see it get to the point where religious people, superstitious people, anybody who is adamant in their support of non-scientific ideas of bad science, junk science, pseudoscience, superstition, and religious. I'd like to see it get to the point where they represent such an extreme minority that they have no relevance or power on the political.
Well, and we're getting there, I think, very slowly, right? We're having it used to be that religion was a very private thing, right? And it wasn't a topic of polite conversation, right? But the religious right in the United States, I think, has gone a long way towards changing that and making it a very public thing. They've wanted to shove their religion down everybody's throats, and so it has become a public thing. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we, poke at it and say, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, this is stupid, this has killed people, and so on. Hopefully, we'll make a little impact, and we'll get to this point where people will say, oh, well, of course that's wrong, of course it's ridiculous. Maybe that's my hope. That's what motivates me.
Yeah. Will technology in the future maybe make it harder to teach religion to kids? Because the technology is knocking on the human nature, and human nature wants to go to the moon and figure out stuff in a way.
Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of people that are anti-technology, and they're writing us on their computer, and they're interacting with us via the TV, and it's like they just don't even get the fact that these technologies were brought to you by science and reason, which are the very things we're advocating, and they're advocating against them, and yet they're using them. All this technology around them, they don't see it as having anything to do with anything.
There's a saying that as soon as you make something idiot-proof, somebody will build a better idiot, and I think that applies in this case to no matter how well we understand the universe or how advanced technology gets, to where any reasonable thinking person would think that this negates or eliminates the need for superstition or religion. No matter how good we get at that, somebody is always going to be better. It's just we need to get to the point where that is the minority, and I think it's actually inevitable. However, I'll add the caveat that it is inevitable, provided that somebody doesn't actually present evidence for their claim. I don't want to sit here and say that there is no God, that's absolutely impossible, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just that this is an unbelievable claim, and nobody seems to be able to support it by anything. If in the future, if God shows up in my living room, or if there is a God and it reveals itself to everybody, or if we find evidence that leads us to a conclusion that there is this type of thing, well, okay, then it'll change. I just don't see that that's likely. I mean, there's a difference between whether or not something's possible and whether it's remotely probable. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it all depends on whether you have an optimistic or pessimistic view of humanity. Is the answer to your question?
yeah, I think the idea of God and superstitions is going to exist in some segment of the population until heat death occurs.
Yeah, and real quick, my last question. If God created everything, how can he ever be innocent and the things he created ever be free in a way? Because everything is just rules.
Right.
I mean, if someone says, you did that, not God, well, I just used the tools of God to do that. So.
Yeah. It's this whole free will theodicy, which is ridiculous.
It depends on how you're gonna, and actually you can go ahead and thanks Anders for calling. I'll answer this one offline while we get the next person. It depends in part upon how you're going to define things, because for example, my father is not responsible for my actions.
Right.
However, if my father was able to see the future and knew everything that I was ever going to do, and still raised me in such a way that I would do those things, then he is culpable.
Yeah.
It's like if I leave a gun sitting on the table and somebody else picks it up and shoots themselves, I'm probably somewhat negligent. I may have been careless, I may not. Maybe it was my house and everything was locked and they broke in and picked it up and shot themselves. If, however, I knew ahead of time that if I put this gun here because I've seen this person walk into my house and fiddle with stuff, if I put it there knowing that he was going to pick it up and shoot somebody, then all of a sudden I do bear more responsibility. It's about what you know and what you don't know, what you can
free
avoid.
will thing. It's like, supposedly God's given us free will. Well, I'd like to kill God.
I'm working on it.
What a gift! What a gift of free will would that be, right?
I'm working on it. I think we have different ideas of free will, which is
we don't want to go down that path too far.
They did that last week.
Came in the air without, and every shadow filled up